Hey there, Pete. You fill me with so much hope. Just hearing such beautifully crafted, looking at such beautifully crafted scoring, it's so great. Such a nice score and such such beautiful treatments of certain problems. So, I am gonna, I am gonna pull apart a lot of this, but it's just, before I do that, I want you to know that it's just incredibly impressive. A really, really great score, and I hope you get a lot of comments and a lot of good feedback on this. Okay, so well, actually, before I jump into this, just to say, I've been saying all along that things should get performed, things should get read, and this score, no less than any other, really. There are a lot of things that would work great in a live situation, and especially, we just heard that rather pathetic attempt of the playback engine to understand what Bisbigliando is, and I almost wonder if there is some way of creating a Bisbigliando sound set. That basically, once it understood the pitches involved, that it would create some kind of randomized, kind of glittering, brushing kind of sound, so that it wouldn't have that sort of ridiculous, impossible kind of tremolo that we just heard. Because, of course, that's not the way that Bisbigliando sounds, right? It's a kind of a whispering sound. So one thing you're going to want to do if you get this performed, speaking of harp, is to make sure that you've got your pitches in your glissando marked correctly. You are using the harp plug-in and everything else, but it seems like I don't know, it just seems like it may have selected the wrong notes or something. So go over that and just make sure that it's all squared away. Really nice harp scoring, by the way. I'll have some more things to say about it, but let's move right on to the scoring now, okay? Of the entire piece. So we start off here with this kind of shimmering stuff going on in the background, and bassoons. I feel it's not enough to just supply F sharp and B with the top note of the chord being this little trill. Okay, so like if you are saying pianissimo, then we're really not getting that sense of that part of the harmony, right? So I think you need that bit of harmony in there. You might add it as like second oboe or something. But I think that the harmony needs to be fuller, because right now it's just the entire context of the chord, right? As kind of being a suspension, like a suspended chord. We're not getting the suspension there of the E speaking very clearly, right? And you're also, in keeping everything in tremolos and trills and stuff in the background, that's a cool kind of shimmering effect, but it doesn't really, like with the bassoon sitting out in front of it, they're not really giving the right kind of harmonic context to the English horn, right? Now, what's in the original score? Hairpins, right? Da 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 da. So that really needs to go in the melody, so that there's some context, right? Da 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 da. Right. So I feel it. You take that away, it's kind of like taking away taking out the punctuation in a sentence, right? So that needs to be in there. And of course, the harp should be brought up to at least piano, right? So that it has more of a chance of being heard. Like, your harp scoring is great, but like keeping it in the background like this just means that nobody's going to be able to hear it at all. Especially like pianissimo harp and pianissimo brass, right? Anytime you have the brass and the harp at the same dynamic level, nobody's going to hear the harp. So the harp should be as loud or louder uh, as the loudest element, right? So if the loudest element is piano crescendo, then your harp should be mezzo piano crescendo, right? To mezzo forte here, right? By the same token, the brass shouldn't get, if you have this beautiful combined texture amongst strings and winds, the brass should not get up to the same dynamic level as everybody else. But why are we just going up to mezzo piano? Right? It just really doesn't seem, it's like going from cool to lukewarm. Right? How about if you went to like all the way up to mezzo forte, right? And by the way, you're going to need crescendo in your bassoons, right? So how about if you went all the way up to mezzo forte by here, right? And how about if your strings weren't piano at the beginning, weren't pianissimo, they were piano at the beginning. So just try to reformat all of that in your score. Like just make an edit version, okay? And then just try this, right? Keep the brass at pianissimo, that's fine. Harp go up to mezzo piano, crescendo to forte, I would say. Leave the dynamics alone for your brass, but go up to mezzo forte with your strings, and maybe the strings could be piano crescendo by here, or even back here piano, right, and then piano crescendo. Okay, I like how you're breaking down your slurs into smaller groups rather than just big, enormous, long, 8-bar slurs or 6-bar slurs. I think here you could break this down into two smaller, it kind of doesn't really make any sense to have one long slur over the first voice and then a tie and then no slur in the second voice, right? And then here you have the second kind of moving back and forth without slurring or anything, right? So just like having these separately articulated notes. So I think that to combine with the smoothness of everything else that's going on, I think that you also need to have ties and slurs in between some of these pitches in the accompaniment. Yeah, so the only other question I would have is, do you want this fingered tremolo really just to be 16th notes, or do you want it to be an unmeasured tremolo with 3 beams? It's just a little unclear. See, it might be good to just spell out, like for the very first beat, like just have show like E, F sharp, in 16th notes written out, and then go to the abbreviation, right, of just E to F sharp with a double beam, just to make it really, really, really clear. So just do that on the first instance, and then go on, because the problem with this usage is that so often the composer actually means an unmeasured fingered tremolo, right? That's what they really mean. And I've actually found, like, in the context of everything that is going on in scores, in some of these orchestration challenge scores, it's very clear, or maybe unclear, whether or not the person wants it to be an unmeasured tremolo. It's rarely clear that it is that 16th notes are really what's desired, right? Because here you've got an unmeasured tremolo on a single note, right? So then you go to a measured fingered tremolo. So this is going to get a raised hand at rehearsal. So the concert master is going to raise their hand and say, listen, I wasn't really sure about this. Is this supposed to be 16th notes, or is it just meant to be, just unmeasured? I think it doesn't make a big difference whether it is or not. So I would actually go for unmeasured, because you get a much more beautifully fluttering sound, right? And much more energy than just going da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, right? Doing the measured tremolo kind of thing. All right, anyways, this is nicely organized. It's very beautiful. I like the glissando. Of course, shouldn't be pianissimo. So I would say mezzo piano from the beginning, and then crescendo to forte here, and then this should be marked mezzo forte on the celesta. Okay, and then everything else is fine. So let's go on to the development. Da 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 da. And I really like the way, once again, you're shortening the slurs to manageable bow lengths, right? Then ba da da, and then we got the same thing kind of echoing here. Da da, you know, like I guess octaves here, clarinet and cello with the divisi right in there. That's nice. And the little trills, really nice little elements in here. I still think you do need like a little bit of nuance here. Ba da 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 da, right? Not just da 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 da, ho hum, right? Da 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 da. Just put a little warmth and color, a little bit of push of color in there. Da 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 dum, da 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 dum. All right, I think you could slur this. Da 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 instead of da da. Same thing in here. Good that you I really like the whole process here of harmonizing the melody in thirds, and then giving the second voice the actual melody, right? And then the first voice is trills. That's a really, really nice idea. Okay, and then bum, 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 bum. I love this. Staccato. So you're going mezzo piano surge and then subito mezzo forte, right? I would say mezzo forte subito. So just reverse the order of these because like you really want the dynamic under the note, and then anything that modifies that dynamic, right, should be after it. They'll understand that it's supposed to be subito, right? That you're not, they're not going, oh, well, mezzo piano down to piano, but down to mezzo forte. What are you talking about? Okay, you don't have to be that worried about it. Just reverse them, okay? Bum, 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 bum. And then here, answering in winds and horns. So here, I would say since you have the horns, or excuse me, trumpets, I meant to say, since you have trumpets on the same pitches as the clarinets, then what you need to do is have your trumpets be pianissimo, right? Especially if you have harp on the same thing, because like piano, trumpets, along with harp, you're not going to hear the harp. I think that you could come in pizzicato on the downbeat rather than going, bump, pizzicato, then on the second beat. Bump, dun, dun, dun. I don't know if that... I mean, it's kind of cool. But it's not balanced anyways, right? So everything's fine here. I would say you don't need to have mezzo piano in your pizzicato. So what you just need here is piano, piano, pianissimo, mezzo piano, or even mezzo forte on your harp. And then you've got a balanced passage, or balanced couple of bars. So bum 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 da 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 da, and interestingly, like since you're able to orchestrate the whole movement, you don't have to just do a massive tutti here, right? So I felt that was one of the drawbacks of just doing a portion, is like the only part of the piece that really suggests a massive tutti ends up getting a massive tutti when that could be delayed until later, right? And then here you have this really cool idea of oboes and horns doubling the strings. So, and once again, to balance, the horns need to be mezzo piano, right? Diminuendo, right? This could go diminuendo to piano, diminuendo to pianissimo, right? So if you really want beautiful, warm brass behind your strings or inside your strings, then it really has to be pianissimo, right? Or else basically you'll hear beautiful, warm, golden brass right in here with a little bit of string icing. And I don't think that's what you want, right? So mark down your brass here, and here you've got your snare drum and then a bit of a timpani roll and so on and so forth. Yeah. That's all fine. Just mark everything down a bit. Okay? Now, going on to this other theme. Da da da. I like the bowing pattern here. Da 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 bum da. Really, really nice. Yeah. So look, that you can't go like the way that this is scored. The brass are basically going to just take over everything, right? Now, did you notice that the like the way everything is marked and the melody is great, right? So that's exactly right. You don't want to necessarily balance things the wrong way. But it's all the same. It isn't balanced right in the brass, right? So we're going to fix your melody for you, okay? So first thing is just talking about how much enormous weight you're putting in the accompaniment, right? In like you don't really double the melody until you get to this G sharp right here, right? Which is being played by first trumpet. So if you listen to the mock-up, right, the beginning at B is fine. You can hear that. And once again, what is this, you guys? Why is everybody scoring winds above strings so much, right? Like when the strings are carrying the melody, and then you have the winds above them, right? It's not that I object to that. It happens in music, but it's happening so frequently in this piece, in different evaluations. Okay, so do you have 2 flutes or 3 flutes? Third flute changes to piccolo. Okay, so that explains that. I think that you can mark flute 1, 2, 3, and then piccolo, right? I don't think I think you should say that you have 3 flutes on this, because that's just confusing. 1, 2, and then having 3. It's okay to say that you're going to have 3 flutes on this. The only difference would be is if you had a separate staff for your third flute, right? And then that transferred between that and piccolo, right? Okay, but you don't need to do that. Just make sure that this is flutes 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so how to balance all of this? So it's all fine right here, okay? And then when you get to here, why do the strings need to be pianissimo? They should just be piano, right? So strings piano, brass pianissimo. Now you got yourself a balance. Now crescendo to mezzo piano, not to forte, right? If you get to forte here, we just can't hear the essence of what the melody is, right? I mean, you hear some of it in the trumpet getting louder, right? Okay, but if you really want the brass to flare in here and to sort of take over the music, that's all fine. Okay, but if you want the brass to be part of this big push here in the strings and for things to sound orchestral, you got to bring them down, right? So pianissimo to mezzo piano here, right? And then here, forte, mezzo forte, and the brass, okay? And then these other elements will balance in the percussion. You don't need to worry about them. And then da 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 da. Okay, mezzo piano to mezzo forte is like lukewarm to room temperature, okay? So try not to do that. Just do what the strings are doing here, right? Just diminuendo to pianissimo in your brass, okay? And then in your harp should be mezzo forte starting here, and this should be mezzo forte to fortissimo. All right, so just really bring up your harp here, or else it's just invisible, just a throwaway. Okay, now here, and you also have to say like you have arpeggiando marks on some and not. So you have to tell us arp or non-arp here, right? So either put the roll marks on or say non-arp. So mezzo forte to forte here, and then here mark piano to mezzo forte, and then you've got yourself a melodic arc, right? And then this will all come popping right out, right? Then and then here, like this is a little clearer, right? Da 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 bum bum. I don't understand why you got this beautiful thing right in here. Your English horn isn't doing anything, right? Couldn't they help out with that? Or maybe maybe the first bassoon could be doubling this, right? Because it's on the same, starts off on the same note. So, it just feels like this is thrown away because there's no doubling on that. There's such firm doubling from two oboes. Then you've also got the problem here of going piano, mezzo forte to what in here, right? So it's better just to have one long crescendo telling us where we're headed, which I would say, if you're going to go all the way up to forte here, just make it the same, right, in your winds, and then leave the brass a bit submerged underneath it, right? Or else right here it's just going to be all about the brass, especially pushing things as high as you do, all the way up to G sharp here, or G natural, excuse me, in the first trumpet, right? It's just going to be so bright, and you've got it marked down to mezzo forte. So, that will be okay. Yeah, just don't. Yeah, and this right in here, nobody's going to hear this against the brass, so I think you should just leave this out, or put it like 2 octaves higher, right? Just put it somewhere where we can hear it. All right. And this is kind of interesting. So, like, here you got harmonization in clarinets and oboe, right, on this idea, and here you got harmonization in seconds, firsts and seconds, but there's no support from the winds right here, right? So nobody's going to really hear this. They'll hear this fine, right? But they're just not going to hear this. So I think you need a little bit of a rethink of some of the small details in here. Okay. So, moving onwards. Then we've got our little resolution right in here. Celesta plus a little bit of our oboe family and bassoons. So it's kind of a really a very pungent little resolution in there. All right. Now we're kind of going back to the same sort of fluttering, stuttering feeling in the strings going forward. And once again, I feel it's unclear, right? Because here you got a triple beam, and here you have a double beam. And I almost feel like this should be written out as separate sixteenths, if that's really what you mean, and it's just this many, right? So I just think we need some clarity from the earlier part, right? So if the earlier part made it absolutely clear that it really was 16th notes by just having the first bar where it occurs, just to really spell out the first beat, what was going on, and then you could go to the abbreviation from the second beat. So if that were established at the beginning of the piece, then this wouldn't be so unclear, right? And then if you went to unmeasured tremolo right in here, then that would be clearer, right? And you might even, just to be absolutely sure, because you have almost no rehearsal time whatsoever, you really could just say unmeasured, like right on this bar, in parentheses, just to be sure. Usually people will just pick up on that. They'll play it the way that it is scored. But if there's any question about it, then the question gets asked, and the question costs you $75 worth of rehearsal time, or $150 or $250, right? Just depending on how long your dithering is. You might just say, just get used to answering the question as fast as you possibly can. Saying measured tremolo from C, unmeasured by the third bar after, and then, just really say what you want as clearly as possible so they can get back to playing. All right, now here we have this big, massive doubling up of 2 flutes, 2 oboes, right? And then we have English horn an octave lower, along with your clarinets. Yeah, so here you say B-flat clarinets. Yeah. Sorry, my cat is snoring in the background. I've got this awesome old ex Tomcat that I adopted about a year ago, and yeah, he just has a raspy breathing from living on the streets for about 8 months. Okay. All right. So bum 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 bum. Yeah, with a little bit of celesta. Yeah. Did you notice in the mock-up the celesta didn't really come through all that loud, right? But I still leave it in. I would mark it up a bit because it's just as delicate as harp. And once again, check the tuning on your glissandos because this doesn't seem like it's in the right key. I don't know. Maybe it got set wrong, or the maybe things didn't work out. Anyway, just check the playback on that because it doesn't seem right. Okay. All right, and then taking over piccolo and flute. Ba-da, 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 ba-da. Yeah, and this is just a really lovely way of bringing it all together. And yeah, you've got pianissimo. Yeah, I wouldn't bring this above a mezzo piano, right? Same thing here, pianissimo, pianissimo, crescendo to mezzo piano. Okay, if you want this to blend right in here. Now we're getting into our home stretch. Now, do you really want that da, bum, 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 or do you want da 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 or da da? I mean, just because winds can intelligently slur everything way better than strings can, in terms of distance, doesn't mean that they should, right? If you are establishing this kind of articulation pattern in your solo violin, shouldn't you do it here? Right? Da, da. Right? So that there's a little bit of emphasis, a little bit of articulation on the downbeat. Okay. But this is all good. I like this. Yeah, once again, just establish whether or not these are really 16th notes. Yeah, because yeah, here's the other thing that confuses it, right? A trill is an unmeasured tremolo between two pitches, right? Whereas this is a measured tremolo of 16th notes, right? So it's going to have a different frequency. And that's the other thing that is going to get the raised hand in rehearsal. It's like, the person saying, this guy's doing unmeasured, that guy's doing a trill, and I've got a measured tremolo. Is this really a measured tremolo? Are those really 16th notes, right? So just save yourself some time. Clarify where the first instance of wherever this happens, right? And make sure that when people go to, go back and forth between 16ths and 32nds, it's just very, very clear that's really what you mean. Okay, just because rehearsal time is just so precious. Yeah, and this, and then we've got harp. So why is the harp playing an octave lower than the strings? Like right where it's harder to hear. Why not just have the harp up there with the strings the same pitch? Same thing here. Why is the harp submerged so much? Okay. But aside from that, everything works, right? Okay, and then we've got oboe and bassoon, right? So, oboe plus bassoon is a very intimate sound, right? So in octaves like this. So in the sense of it building, right? English horn plus bassoon and then oboe plus bassoon, it isn't really, I feel it's like really not getting any more intimate. It's not all that much of a change, right? It's not it is not an amplification of what happened before. It's just kind of more of the same, right? So that would be my only critique there. And look at this. You broke the slur there, so why don't you break it here? Right? Okay. All right, and then just a little bit of roll. Yeah, so I wouldn't mark piano here and mezzo piano there, going down to... Well, I see what you're saying. You're saying mezzo piano down to pianissimo. You sort of want that color to kind of come out. But it's still going to overwhelm the melody, right? So unless you put hairpins in here going up to a mezzo forte, when you hit that, then this will definitely overwhelm the melody. I think piano accent down to pianissimo is fine, or mezzo piano with no accent down to pianissimo is fine. With hairpins, if you put in hairpins like you do here, right? I mean, why aren't there any hairpins here? Maybe that's a proofreading error. And once again, harp should be an octave higher. Yeah, this is all good. All right, and now we've got A2 flutes, and English plus clarinets, right? It's going to have a very wind band kind of a sound, a very, very cool kind of phased sound up there like that, right? With only English horn an octave lower to, yeah. See, I'm not so convinced by that, right? There's no balance here with the octave lower. So you have this huge amount of weight on top of the at the top of the octave, and almost no weight at the bottom of the octave, right? What's the first bassoon doing? Nothing. He could be helping out, or she could be helping out the English horn player and bulking up this line a little bit. And totally possible. I mean, you are only going up to A there, right? A above middle C. All right. Yeah, and then here we have celesta and harp and yeah. Okay, and now we've got solo violin plus celesta. That's really lovely. Yeah. Yeah, and this will work out good. Put in the hairpin here too. Mezzo piano. I don't think you need to go mezzo piano to mezzo forte. Just go mezzo piano crescendo, right? In both instruments, right? And then tail off here. That's fine. I mean, I would only mark this if you're going up to forte, right? I mean, and in fact, you could go mezzo piano, F, poco, dolce, is what I would do right there, all right? Or even F espressivo, right? Go da 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 da, and then put a diminuendo here and then one there. Yeah, and once again, just either piano accent diminuendo to pianissimo or mezzo piano no accent to. And look, it's not enough to I see what you're doing here. You're putting the dynamic in the middle of the braced staves, meant to apply to both, right? But that is an old-fashioned idea. You need to add the dynamic to both parts, to both staves nowadays. Okay, and then we have this lovely high F sharp in our bassoon. Right, that's nice. Okay, and then the little diddly 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 diddly. That's nice. Yeah, so just watch out some of those little balance features that I mentioned, right? That will work out a lot better for you. Then the little codetta. Bum 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 bum. Just all celesta, harp, harmonics, and everything else. Okay, so balance here. Triple P in trumpet. Piano, espressivo in celesta and harp. Now, there are no instances in this entire piece of you rolling downwards, correct? right? So there is no need for you to have a roll mark pointing upwards. The roll mark pointing upwards, is basically overstating the case, right? We already know that rolls roll upward, right? So there's like zero reason to mark anything with an arrow on it, right? The arrow is only used to let the player know that you are correcting from what was a down roll, right? Or you're going back and forth between down rolls and up rolls. But when you include it like this, there may end up being like 5 or 10 seconds where the player goes throughout the rest of their part to see whether or not there was a down roll that they need to see. And they might be looking at this part and saying, well, why are there no down rolls if there are up rolls? So you're just basically wasting everybody's time, right? So don't put in up rolls. If I can just say this one more time to everybody, don't put in up rolls unless there are down rolls, right? Unless you're going back and forth, you're correcting a down roll, because up rolls are the default, right? So, to just really, really spell it out, you don't need that. What you need is that. Okay? That's all you need. And this is really lovely right in here. This sort of intersecting back and forth between first clarinet and bass clarinet. That's really nice. And then, little tremulous first bassoon. Yeah, so like I said, just beautifully crafted. And like, here's some low flute that really works. It works great, right? I mean, but the only problem here is that you've got this, you've got horn right in here playing that same G sharp, right? Same sounding G sharp. So basically, we're not going to really hear the flute. And the flute actually dies off before the horn does. So if you really want this flute to come in and be a factor, then the horn actually has to disappear, or else there's just kind of no point there, right? So just to watch out, right? Because the horn, balance is not. It's not enough to say this instrument plays louder, has a louder projection value than that instrument. You also have to think about what are the overtones like, right? The overtones of a flute in its first octave are fairly weak, right? So that is part of its weakness, right? Now, so there are some players who can play low flute with really, they can kind of exaggerate the overtones, they can bring it out, but that ceases to be like concert flute playing. It becomes more like folk flute playing, or I don't know, rock flute playing. There were some the lower register of some of Ian Anderson's playing, and actually also Peter Gabriel does not get enough credit for his flute playing. But he was a really decent, I wouldn't say great, but he was a decent rock flute player. But both of those players could bring out their low register very strongly when they wanted to. But that's not really concert playing, right? So with concert playing, you have a certain shape and quality to the sound, which is like 3 times as soft as horn, right? So even when they're both really trying to manage things, like say in Farben by Schoenberg, right? You still get things that are just inherently stronger because of their overtones, even when everybody is just really balancing the force and listening to each other, right? So that's the problem that you've got here with this, with this note right here. Pungent is not the right word, but it'll be controlled and it'll be clear, right? This beautiful clear G sharp, right? And now you're adding this very soft flute behind it, so we're not really going to hear that, right? And then you sort of want the continuation of this F sharp, right? That quality in there. And I'm not seeing a bridge between these two notes. I know what you intend to do here, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is so cool, that whole idea there. Maybe there would be a way to use like English horn rather than flutes, right? Maybe English horn plus bassoons, keeping this kind of going right in here. I mean, it is a really cool idea what you're attempting to do here, but I mean, unless the flutes take over and the horn and the bassoon dovetail into them seamlessly, then I think that the flutes are wasted here, right? That's just my observation about that. But it's still, I mean, it's such a beautiful idea. Then, of course, Bisbigliando, right? So this is all fine, just realizing it's pianissimo, and you're just like the harpist is just kind of doing a back and forth here. Okay, so the problem here is that you're repeating the note of D sharp, right? So what the better thing for you to do here would be to have, I would say, have the harpists go do bisbigliando between this note here, this chord here, F sharp, G sharp, and D sharp, and then this one here should be E flat, B, and G sharp, right? And then then it'll be individual strings for either hand, and the D sharp will go back and forth between D sharp to enharmonic E flat, and then you won't get stomping, right? Because the player's hands are just kind of rustling or over these strings and kind of exciting them in a very faint way in the background. And you want that, it's obvious you want that to sort of stand out, and you've really submerged all of the other elements beautifully. And I would say that your trumpets could be even softer too, right? Soft and muted, triple P, and I think that they'll work great. Okay. And then the bisbigliando will stand out in these elements here, these melodic elements. By the way, she should mark, I'd say, piano espressivo in both celesta and harp. And, give them some nuances, give them some hairpins. Bum, 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 bum. Right? Okay, so those are my thoughts on your piece, Pete. And so, just like I was saying before, just something, just like with Patrick's piece before and other pieces I've commented on, you put so much great effort into this. It's just obviously a labor of love and a work of great craft. And it just would be a shame, it would be such a shame if like you didn't get a chance to possibly hear this played by live players. So knock it into shape, all right, is all I can say. Like, use whatever suggestions that I gave you, and any kind of rethinking that you need. Oftentimes I'll say, hey, have you thought of this, or hey, have you thought of that? Not saying change it, but just to say, look, your option A might not work as well as option B, and then I am actually hoping that you'll come up with an option C, which is something I didn't suggest, right? So people aren't just like saying, oh yeah, Thomas says to do this. I'd almost prefer it if like, oh, I understand now what I really want to do here. I'm going to do that, which may or may not be anything I suggested. So anyhow, however it works, Pete, if you have the energy, if you have the willpower, if you have the resources, the contacts to get this read by a real orchestra, then do it. That's all I've got to say. Nice work. Really nice work. And it just remains for me, once again, to thank you for your support of the channel and for your excellent entry. I mean, what a great entry. I mean, I'm hoping that you and Patrick and everybody who got a big charge out of this challenge will contribute entries to the 2021 challenge, which is going to be enormous. It's just going to be a huge, it's going to be an incredible score, and especially for the people who are supporting at the higher level, the Dobrev and Longa supporters. They're really going to have something to sink their teeth into on the second half of, or the last part of the selection coming up. So tempting, I wish I could tell you what it was. It's just such a great piece, and such a left turn from what Lili scored here. But yeah, no less inspiring, and hopefully will bring out a completely different kind of orchestrator in the people in the community who choose to participate. So thank you, one and all. I appreciate this. It's such a great way for me to have a conversation with you, right? The conversation is, I say, hey, score this if you can. And then you come back with me and says, hey, this is what I scored. And then I come back and I say, this is what I thought about your scoring. I just feel that conversation is so important to me as a teacher and coach. It makes me better and, forces me to think harder and to come up with original ways to think about things and to give feedback. And I appreciate that so much. So thanks everybody for watching. Thank you, Pete, for being a part of the community and a part of this challenge. And I will see you in the second to last of these evaluations for this year.